crowdfunding activity. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can develop your own research project and your research questions. We're going to talk about finding information and also learning about credibility of your specific sources. And then once we finish up with that, we're going to kind of go into how we at the library can help you, how we can help you with all of these fun, interesting things. All right, so I'm going to get it started. We're going to go ahead and start with, let's see if I can get this little video. So for those who don't know the premise of Doctor Who, this is a little clip from Doctor Who, one of my favorite shows. The main character is a time-traveling, space-traveling, he's actually an alien, but we're not going to get into that. So he went back in time and he had a whole episode where he's talking to Vincent van Gogh, and at the end of the episode, he brings him to the present time and shows him his artwork in the Musée d'Orsay, I believe, in Paris, and kind of shows him how his artwork is appreciated. And I thought this would be a great way to kick off the presentation, and also if we have any few stragglers coming in, they can, hop in at the end too. So let me know if you guys can't hear this, have any issues, just let me know.
Where are we?
Paris, 2010 AD, and this is the mighty Musée d'Orsay, home to many of the greatest paintings in history.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Ignore that, I've got something more important to show you.
Take all your chances while you can. Never know when they'll pass you by. Like a sum the mathematician cannot solve. Like me, trying my hardest to explain. It's all about your crossing kisses. Those first steps there, I can't calculate.
Black. Yes. We met a few days ago. I asked you about the church and Roberta's.
Oh, yes. Glad to be of help. You were nice about my tie.
Yes. And today is another cracker, if I may say so. But I just wondered, between you and me, in 100 words, where do you think Van Gogh rates in the history of art?
Well, big question. But to me, Van Gogh is the finest painter of them all. Certainly the most popular, great painter of all time. The most beloved. His command of color, the most magnificent. He transformed the pain of his tormented life into ecstatic beauty. Pain is easy to portray, but to use your passion and pain to portray the ecstasy and joy and magnificence of our world, no one had ever done it before. Perhaps no one ever will again. To my mind, that strange, wild man who roamed the fields of Provence was not only the world's greatest artist, but also one of the greatest men who ever lived.
Vincent, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is it too much?
No. They are tears of joy. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Sorry about the beard.
It's all about you. Crossing kisses.
Okay, so I hope everyone was able to see that and enjoy it as much as I did. I was definitely telling Lorian yesterday that when I first saw this, when it first came out, I was crying, just crying my eyes out because
Same.
I absolutely love this scene. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
I just said same. I was watching Doctor Who at the time when it came out too, and one of the episodes that I remember the most because of how affecting it really is.
Yeah. And it's pretty great. And I love the scene mostly because I absolutely love Vincent van Gogh. He's like one of my favorite artists. And to just be able to like bring him to the future and ask him questions would be like one of the greatest things I think I would be able to do. I would love it so much. But unfortunately, we can't do that. And I really hate that because, you know, there are so many questions that we have about specific times and like, you know, time periods and histories and, you know, people. There are so many questions we have about these people that I would love to just be able to ask. And so that's kind of what we're going to get into is how we do research without being able to bring that person to life and to our modern time. How are we able to formulate questions and kind of get answers without being able to just directly ask them? Since we have our topic, which is Vincent van Gogh, we're going to start thinking about our question. What is the question that we're going to get into when we're doing our research? And one of the biggest things is we often have students who come up to the desk or chat with us on our website and are just like, hey, my English instructor told me I have to write a paper. It's on this, this theme. I have to write about Vincent van Gogh. Like, can you help me find sources? And we're, just like, yeah, like, of course. But like, what is your question? We know your topic is Vincent van Gogh, but what is your question? Like, what are you asking about Vincent van Gogh? So we kind of want to take this idea of curiosity into the topic and develop it into a research topic. So research is essentially just asking increasingly complex questions whose answers might in turn develop additional questions or lines of inquiry into a specific field or a specific topic you have. So for us and our theme today, we decided we were going to look at Vincent van Gogh and which ear he cut off. So our question is going to be, which ear was it? Was it his left or his right? And if you guys have any thoughts, which one you guys think it is, go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'd love to see what you guys think. So a lot of people, their first step would be, okay, well, Vincent van Gogh is a painter, so let's bring up his self-portrait. And we're going to look at this painting and we're going to be like, okay, great. So, it's on his left side. So clearly that was his, right ear, so we're like thinking if we're looking at Vincent van Gogh, that's going to be his right side. But we have to remember the importance of context, and context surrounds everything that you do in research. Everything that it's almost in every single discipline in which you're related to, whether it's history or art history, science, there's going to be context related to the specific question that you have. So for like a science example, say you're dropping a ball from the top of a building and you'd love to see, how fast it's going to take to hit the ground. Well, you could do that within a vacuum per se, with no other things contacting it. And you can get a specific, amount of like time that it's going to take to hit the bottom, to hit the ground. However, in real life, we have to deal with things like air resistance, wind resistance, and the atmosphere, all of these other really fun and also horrible things that you have to deal with when you're looking into science. So it's the same for a lot of historical questions. You have to think about the context in which the painting was drawn. So in this case, we have to remember that Van Gogh was probably most likely actually doing his self-portraits from a mirror. So in this case, he's got a mirror next to him and he's got his painting canvas in front of him, and he's drawing what he is seeing in the mirror and not what somebody is looking at him. And so is the same for the entire context of what is going on, the incident itself. As for the incident, we need to start thinking about the additional questions that come along with him cutting off his ear. So the question within the question of him cutting off his ear is, why is he doing it? How much of his ear got cut off, and who? Who was there when his ear got cut off? Was it in a knife fight? Was he the one who did it? Did he do it in a, psycho, maniac episode? Or was he in a knife fight with somebody else and it got chopped off? these are the questions that you're going to start getting into to research. You're going to want to start answering these questions, which will in turn help answer your initial question. So where do you find your information? So this is where I'm going to hand it off to Lorian, who is our reference librarian, and she's really great at this. So we're going to look at a few examples of quote unquote answers that you might find if you're just doing initial research. And then we're going to also talk about understanding the credibility of these specific sources and how you can trust these specific sources. All right, I'm going to go stop presenting, and Lorian, you can take it away.
Good deal. All right, so make sure you guys can see me. Are you seeing me here?
We are seeing you.
Awesome. Okay, so where we left off is where we find our information. So something that we want to talk about is how do we know who to trust, right? We're going to find lots of different information when we go looking in lots of different places. How do we know what information that we want to use for our research? Something that we have to help us out with that question is something called the CRAP test. And I always say, oh, it's got, you know, a goofy name. I find it to be memorable, actually. And it's an acronym. And the letters in the acronym stand for currency, reliability and relevance, authority and audience, and purpose and point of view. So just to give you a sort of quick rundown of what these things actually mean, the C stands for currency, which of course means the age. How old is this source? Now, if you're doing some research on a scientific topic or a topic related to health and medicine or computer science, for example, you're going to want really recent information because those fields develop and change really, really quickly. So an article from the 80s on computer science is probably going to be next to worthless to me unless I'm specifically writing something about how computers worked in the 80s. For a topic like our Van Gogh question, I will not say that currency is completely unimportant, but because this happened a long time ago and people have been talking about it since it happened, we don't necessarily need to be as concerned because a source from like 20 years ago is probably going to maybe still have useful information. And of the sources that we have, because we're looking online, we don't end up with sources that are that old anyway. They might be a difference of a few years between them. But like I said, you really want to look for that publication date and pay attention to that currency when you're looking at more quickly developing, quickly changing type research. The R, we're talking about reliability and relevance. Well, the relevance is simply what is the focus of this source? Is it relevant to my question, relevant to my interests? You may find an article thinking that it looks like a good source, but then as you go in and you read a little further, you realize, they really only touch on my question a little bit, and it's more about answering these other questions. The reliability is simply, how do we know where they are getting their information from? And the best way to determine that is to see whether or not they cite their sources. If they tell us that they know a certain thing because it was written about in a Harvard study, because we know where that information came from and we can go find it ourselves. The authority and audience questions have to do with who is the article for and who is the author. So authority is just the way we ask ourselves, how do we know that this person knows what they're talking about, right? Because they may have authority based on their education. They may have authority based on their personal experience. You know, it just depends on what kind of question you're asking. I would ask probably someone like a historian or an art historian questions about Van Gogh and what he did. I probably wouldn't ask a computer scientist, even though they're going to have a lot of authority when I ask them questions about computer science. Our audience, who is this material for? There's a lot of difference between, say, an article that's trying to explain the basics of a topic to an audience of young children versus something written by and for experts in that topic that really gets into the nuances. So a little book that's like, Baby's First Guide to Coding, which does exist and I have seen, that's trying to explain kind of what computers are and how they work to like incredibly super young audience, very different from that computer science article in a journal that's written, for professional programmers and that kind of thing. And our P stands for purpose or point of view. So we're asking ourselves basically, why was this information published? Does the author have a certain point of view of which they are trying to convince us? Are they perhaps trying to sell us something? Or are they simply sharing the information for the sake of answering questions and sharing information? This becomes very important in a couple of different situations, one being where you see a lot of ads. If you do online research and you end up with a page that's covered in ads, you're going to have to ask yourself, are they really trying to share this information for knowledge or because they're really trying to put their advertisements out there? Also, political topics, elections, that kind of thing. You know, there's always a point of view that the author is trying to convince you to go along with. So keep that in mind. You will not necessarily always be able to check off every single part of the CRAP test for every single source you ever see. But these are the 4 big categories of things to keep in mind when you're trying to make that determination of who should I trust. Now, if we are to do a little bit of online research to answer our Van Gogh question, we will find a variety of different sources. And what we've done here is kind of pull some of those sources to look at specifically. So what I want to do is take a look here and try to figure out who do we think is right using the CRAP test. So one of those sources is from the Van Gogh Museum's frequently asked questions on their webpage. And they tell us Van Gogh cut off his left ear, he used a knife, and he did it because he was in a fight with Gogh, who was a fellow artist and friend of his. So that gives us some answers as to which ear, how did he do it, why did he do it. There's an article from CNN, the news network, that tells us he actually cut off his left ear lobe, not his whole ear, and that he did it with a razor as opposed to a knife. It references that fight with Gogh, but it also talks about he was having hallucinations. He had just learned of his brother's engagement, so he had some emotional, news. And then he actually gave the earlobe to a prostitute. So it gives us an answer to another question, which is, what did he do with it? What happened to it? The Berkeley Library News is associated with UC Berkeley in California, so a university. And they tell us that according to some research that has been done by a historian, he did cut off his entire ear, and he was having a mental breakdown when this happened. So that kind of goes along with CNN talking about him having hallucinations and stuff. And actually that he gave it to not a prostitute, but a maid who worked at a brothel. So there's a little bit of a question of what actually happened to it, who ended up with it, who was that person. This inquires into some of those questions. And then we have an academic journal article. And what this does is dig a little bit deeper into those questions of when did he do it? Why did he do, not just why did he cut off his ear, but why did he do this act of self-mutilation? Why was it specifically his ear? It really looks at it from a psychological perspective. So as you can see, we just grab a handful of different resources and they give us a lot of information, some of which makes sense together and some of which really does not. So how do we decide who to trust? Do you feel like one of these sources is going to be more trustworthy than the other?
I gotta say, this conversation about whether or not he gave it to a brothel or a prostitute or whatever, that is just such a hilarious conversation. So it is really funny.
It kind of is, because you start off with a question about an artist and his motivations and end up going, okay, but was this woman a maid, or like what was her job,
Yeah, so we do have one person in the comment who says they would hope that the museum is the most right.
Sure, that makes sense. And you want to think that based on, like I said, the questions that we can ask ourselves based on the CRAP test. Now, as I said, currency, we don't necessarily need to throw it out totally, but it's not super relevant regarding this particular issue. Same with the relevancy topic. We know that these are all relevant to the question of Van Gogh and his ear because we have gotten those answers from the articles, and they do all, give us their sources of information or make them, make them known in some way. Our question now, who is writing these articles and who are they for, is a good question to ask when it comes to these particular articles. Now, the Van Gogh Museum FAQ is going to be written by the Van Gogh Museum. So as we, know, that's going to be art historians and people who are experts specifically on Van Gogh and his life and his work. It is written for basically the curious general public, anyone who might be possibly reading the website in preparation to attend the museum, or possibly people who are looking at his work online and learning about his life, you know, as a fan of his or someone interested in art. The CNN article, by contrast, is not going to be written by art historians and Van Gogh experts, because who writes for places like CNN? Journalists and news reporters, right? Now, that does not mean that they are not trustworthy. If you are a professional journalist, you are qualified to write about all kinds of different things because you have that credential as a journalist and you know how to do your research and fact check. But it is not written by a specific subject matter expert. Who is the intended audience of CNN? Kind of similar to the Van Gogh Museum in that it's sort of the general public. It might not even be people who are specifically interested in Van Gogh, but just people who have gone to the CNN website to check the news and see that headline about Van Gogh and go, oh, hey, that's interesting. So it's intended to inform and entertain sort of the general public. That Berkeley Library News article is going to be, again, not specific experts in art and art history, but an academic writership of librarians and researchers, because it's written on the library's website, and the library actually, that specific library has holdings that relate, you know, has books and has documents in its collection that relate to this question. So that's why they're writing about it. And their audience is going to be maybe a little bit more on the academic side than like CNN or the Van Gogh Museum, because the people reading the library website are probably associated with the school or associated with libraries in some way. That journal article, however, is going to be the most academically inclined of all these, both based on who is writing it and who they are writing for. An academic journal article is usually written by experts in that field for other experts in that field. So because this journal article is asking those questions about why did he do this, when did it happen, and what caused this, what was he reacting to, what were his motivations, this is actually approaching it from a psychological point of view. So this is written by someone studying psychology for other psychology experts. So we can get an idea kind of.
Oh, I was just going to say we had a little comment in the chat saying it was very interesting comparing sources, never thought to do so. And I thought that was a great point, and like pointing out, because, you know, we can use the CRAP test to kind of look at who's right, but in reality, I think a lot of these are really, they're kind of right in their own right, but you do need to remember the who they're writing for. And I think that's the important part when you're looking at articles for an essay or for a paper.
Mm-hmm. And like I said before, they're all operating on some level of authority. None of these are from some random person who we have no idea who they are, and maybe they just made a Facebook post or something. They're all people who are qualified to write about this in one way or another, but it's like, who are they writing to?
Yes. Yeah. And also, you know, if you look at the journal article as well, it kind of follows that the what I like to call WH questions, which is like the why questions, the how, the who. It follows that, you know, of looking at all, why and what's happening rather in the context surrounding it, rather than just the specific question itself. Whereas like the Van Gogh is answering, okay, just simply it's the left ear. The other ones are kind of looking at the surrounding context of what's going on.
Looking at more of that context, exactly. So another thing that you will kind of take into account when you look at these sources is actually just look at them and their appearance. So these are screenshots of the first three of those chosen sources. So the Van Gogh Museum, the CNN article, and the Berkeley Library News. Do we notice anything about these just off the bat comparing them?
Feel free to drop answers in the question, guys. They're in the chat.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Someone said the length, so yes.
The length, yeah. And now these screenshots are not all of all the articles, because they are, you know, you could scroll down, but the one on the far left, the museum one, that is the full answer. It's just a couple sentences because it's an FAQ. It's frequently asked questions, so it's just question and answer format, right? And none of these are excessively long. I also see.
Hello.
Sorry. Oh, hello. Hi.
Hi. I just noticed in the museum one, it's the actual painting. It looks like in the museum, which to me looks more credible. And then the library one, it shows you more of an overview of Van Gogh, like his life and stuff. That's what I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very good observation. We have more context in maybe some of them where they're talking more about his life versus, you know, the museum and the CNN article gives us this painting. They all have pictures, which is kind of like a duh observation, but we'll see all of them are using color, showing us pictures of stuff. We got this lady looking at this ear in the middle one, which is talking about, you know, the different kinds of study that have been done up to and including making like physical replicas of his actual ear. They got color, they got stuff to, you know, draw the eye. Let me show you the academic journal article by contrast. What's different about this?
No picture. Correct.
No pictures, right. Like, I mean, just the kind of, again, first thing you sort of notice is the fact that it's very straightforward, I guess I could say. You got text, you got the author's name and the title, and that's pretty much it. Now, what do you
Cheryl, did you have
when
something
see
you wanted to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just looking at that article too. It's in detail. It looks pretty credible too. Gives you a lot of background, I noticed, that you might not get from the other websites.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. These kinds of articles are definitely going to go into way more detail because, for another thing, they're much longer. This is just the abstract. I don't actually know how many pages this particular article is, but they'll go up to 30, 35 pages. You know, they're not all quite that long, but they will be much longer than a blurb on the museum's website or an article on CNN that's like, you know, you scroll and it's like 5 or 7 paragraphs.
Gotta say, even for me, I did a master's in history. This was a long paper.
Okay. Right. And they do get, I say dense. I try to avoid, I don't want to say that it's like it'll take you longer to read, not just because it is longer, but because it goes into so much detail and uses a lot of expert terminology because it's written by experts for experts. Do we think this is more credible?
It looks it to me.
Yeah.
Yep, and we have another yes.
Some yeses. Yeah, I'm trying not to ask it like a leading question, like, oh, tell me yes. These articles are written with a high level of authority. As I said, experts writing to other experts. That does mean they're going to have all of their information cited. So we're going to be able to go and see where they got their information from and how they know it. Of course, though, it does not mean that they are completely perfect all the time. You know, mistakes are made, things are misinterpreted. It's always possible for just about anything you see to not be the most trustworthy source. But when we take into account the elements of the CRAP test, we find in regards to currency, in regards to relevance, reliability, the author's credentials, the audience, it all lines up with all of those points. Now, there's another kind of source that we can talk about, though. And that is the. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Sorry, I think we lost you for a second. Go ahead.
Sorry, we're okay. Primary source, so secondary sources are going to be things that were written about something by other people after the fact. So these things have all been written in, you know, the most recent century, the most recent few decades, as opposed to this, which is actually coming from the time and place of the occurrence. These are the notes written and the diagrams drawn by the doctor who treated Van Gogh. And one really good thing about primary sources when we can access them is that they get rid of the middleman, so to speak. We are not relying on someone else's observations and someone else's interpretation and the mistakes or the personal observations that they might make. We are seeing it directly from the source, directly what the doctor himself did. So in looking at this, can we answer any of our questions based on this particular primary source? To me, it's a pretty clear answer of how much of it was gone, right?
Yep, we had one answer who said which ear and how much. Agreed, very much agreed.
Exactly. We can see if I'm the doctor looking at Van Gogh, the way I've drawn this, it is going to be his left ear, and it's going to be most of the whole ear. There's only a tiny little piece left there. So we can compare that. If I'm going to step back just a minute and go here, we can compare it to some of our other sources and see all of the ones that specify which ear do say left ear, but we've got this CNN article saying, it was just the left ear lobe. When we have conflicting information like that, we have to decide who we're going to trust. In this case, I think we're right to say, comparing that with the primary source and with the Van Gogh Museum that's got the, art historians, and even the Berkeley Library News with the historian who says entire ear, we have more sources that correlate with that entire ear versus the earlobe, plus we have the sources with kind of like more specific authority saying full ear versus the earlobe. So that's kind of a way that we can compare those sources to arrive at an answer.
Also, Sharon dropped in the chat that unrazor means razor. So, we do have that information from the primary source.
Handwriting, but wow, Sharon, thank you so much. I thought maybe I would get something cool out of his, but now I see, now that you've pointed out, I see right on the first half with the drawing of the full ear on the second line, he does say something un razor. So that does give us another answer, which is he specified razor as opposed to knife. So that is really cool.
Congrats on knowing French there.
Right? Well done. I mean, I could figure out that un razor means razor, but I couldn't read his handwriting. Okay, yeah, so we can get some answers based on this and sort of compare it to the answers we got from our other pieces of research and make a decision. Now, we're not always going to be able to arrive at a definitive answer for every single question. Do we know why he did it? We see similarities in some of these articles. We can say it probably has something to do with an upset mental state. Was it because of a fight with his friend? Was it because of news from his brother? Was it because of mental illness? Maybe a little bit of each, we don't know because, again, we can't bring him here now and ask him. And he, unfortunately, did not write it down or tell anyone that we know of specifically, here's why I did this. But now that we have done this research, we have more information than we started with. We have an idea of some of the things that were going on to cause this situation, right? So at this point, we've arrived at the answers to which we can arrive at this question. And what I want to do is tell you a little bit about how the library can help you answer these kinds of questions. Now, like Alyssa said towards the beginning, you might come in with us and say, hey, I have this question. I'm supposed to answer which ear did Van Gogh cut off and why? And we'll start digging into those questions and show you what kinds of sources that you can look at. You might come in not quite that far along yet and say, I have to write a paper on Van Gogh. We can help you figure out your research needs. We can help you find out what it is you need to find out, and we can show you where to find those things. And I'm going to show you in a bit a few of the different ways we have of accessing resources. We can also help assess the authority of any of these resources. So all the stuff that I've just done with the CRAP test, determining how old are they, what's the authority, all that, we can kind of have those conversations together and help you figure out if you've got sources that are conflicting. How do you know which one is the more trustworthy? We can also help you with citations. If you have not yet encountered the need to do citations, you will encounter them really soon. You probably have already. And it basically is just the way that you show where you got your information from, and there's a very specific way that it has to be done. And we can help you make sure all of that is. So I'm going to show you a couple of things here. The very first one is how to find books. And by books, I mean both ebooks and physical books, because you will be physically in the library sooner or later, we promise. So there's an easy search widget on the site that I'm just going to show you how to use. So let me get out of my presentation there and go and show you library.cscc.edu. This is the library's homepage, and basically any library research you can do, you can start from this page to do it. If you scroll down, you will see the same thing that you see in this screenshot here, the easy search bar. And it's set up so that you can search various different things. If you click on books and you put in your search term, you will find a list of results. Now, I put in Van Gogh. If you ask us specifically as Van Gogh's ear, you may or may not get any results. You want to keep it kind of a little bit broad when you're searching books. I see some physical books and periodicals that are in the library. If you see a call number and a location and it just says book or periodical, that's going to be a physical material you need to go to the library and get. You can either jot down now these ones that say Delaware campus obviously are not on the main campus, but this one is. So you would jot down that call number, take it to the library. Any librarian will be happy to help you find it if you can't find it. We also do have ebooks though, and those are the ones with the little red E icon right there. And if I want to view an ebook, all I have to do is click where it says view online. And depending on what kind of source it is, you will be prompted to log in. This one, because it is in this particular OhioLink database, it's going to ask me to pick my institution. So I'm going to scroll down until I see Columbus State. And you can just leave it on main campus if it asks you a branch. And this is going to ask you your first and last name. So I'm just going to log in with mine. And then your ID number, which is that number that is on your student ID card. And you can also get it out of Blackboard. Sometimes you're just going to be asked your last name and your Cougar ID. Sometimes it won't ask you to pick your school. It just depends on the database. But as you can see, I've accessed the book here. If I click on chapters, I'm going to be able to read the chapters of the book. So in this case, I believe we have a chapter that mentions Van Gogh in the title. Maybe I'm looking at a different book than I was previously. Oh, it's probably in Literary Skies because it's probably about Starry Night. But if you click on read, it will take you to the book and it looks just exactly like it does in the print book. Same pictures, same page numbers, etc., etc. It's just as good as having the actual book there. So that's really good, especially for right now when we can't access those physical books in the library, but you will also be able to do that. So in addition to that, we do also have databases that you can use. And databases are where you're going to find things like those academic journal articles, newspaper and magazine articles, in addition to dictionaries, encyclopedias. We have a lot of like business information about companies if you find yourself in a business class. And the way you do that is just to click on find books and articles and then databases. So I'm going to take you back to the home page and show those to you. You will click up here where it says find books and articles. And then go down here to databases and you will see the big long list. And these are all of the ones that we can access. And so you can filter them by subject and pick, well, I want to look at the art ones because I have an art topic, and you will see them all here. Or you can filter them by the type and you can see we have audio, ebooks, encyclopedias, articles, maps, all kinds of good stuff. So you can base it on whichever criteria you have. And again, when you actually go into one of the databases, the first time you do it, you will be prompted like this to enter your last name and your Cougar ID number. Wow, I don't know why it, okay, that was my fault.
And we did have one person in the comments say, I honestly didn't know any of this existed. And that's exactly why we're doing this.
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
exactly. Because a lot of times, since you can't physically come into the library, you might just be like, well, I got a Google search. And you definitely can. Some of that stuff that we talked about Van Gogh, we did find via Google, but you also want to take a look at this stuff because it is here for your use specifically from the library, and you know that it's good info because it came from the library. Databases. Was there something else? Oh no. Okay, so I'm gonna let Alyssa talk, but I'm gonna show this slide, right?
Yeah. Okay. So including in addition to the databases, there's a lot of other really cool things that we have. So I just wanted to mention this, which is our anatomy models. It's a 3D model of all of the anatomy. You can get the skeletal, you can get the circulatory, and you can get the muscular stuff that goes along with it. And I just thought this was cool to bring up because if we were talking about Van Gogh cutting off his ear, we can actually see up in here the posterior, I think it's auricular? Yeah, oratory. These are actually the two like main veins that go up past your ear and up into your scalp. And we actually can find out that when he did cut off his ear, he actually severed one of those arteries because it's nearly impossible to cut off your ear right there and without hitting one of those. So it's a very important part of your, muscular skeletal system. And we have these resources. You can look at these things. So it's not just, we're not just doing research on the historical aspect of whatever, but you can also look at these different types of viewpoints of what happens when you cut off an ear.
Yeah, think outside the box and think what other, medical, scientific, historical, etc., context might be helpful.
So you can go ahead to the next page. So we're just going to look a little bit about how you can chat with us, or you can give us an email or call. So Lorian's going to go ahead back to the web page, and there's like 2 different ways that you can chat with us. If you look down in the lower right corner, there is like a little box that usually pops up and it says chat now. So you can just go ahead and open that, type in your name, your contact information, and your question, and we will be able to direct you to the right person. So once Lorian types in, hey, I'm Claudette Cougar, this is my email, and I have a question about Van Gogh. I'm doing research on Van Gogh's ear, and I couldn't find any articles. Like, I was struggling when I was looking on the website. This is a great place to start. So once you open that chat dialog, once you hit the start chat there, you'll be connected to either me or one of my circulation specialists or one of the reference librarians who will either help you directly with finding those articles or get you pointed in the right direction to the person to talk to. So that's one way. And there's also this little bubble that says ask the library there, and you could just click on that and it does the exact same thing. And that little box in the bottom right-hand corner is going to pop up on every single page that you're on. So if you get stuck and you're on the databases page and you're like, oh man, I really have no idea where I'm going, you can just click on that and we will help you through it. So just, be aware that that's always there. And we are also available by email or by phone if you don't feel comfortable chatting with us. So this is our contact information. It is just on that main page, the library.cscc.edu. It's also available if you go to the main CSCC website, there should be a drop-down link for student resources, and we should be listed there as well. So, there's all these different ways that you can contact us, get information from us. And I also saw that somebody chatted and said there were a few questions on the CSCC Facebook contact page about human anatomy. That's a great post. We do have a Facebook page as well. So I am going to actually go ahead and plug that in today. I'm going to make a note for that. We'll get that listed. We'll share it with CSCC Facebook, the main page, and hopefully they share it as well and get us some information. Okay, great. And Sharon also asked us what our hours are. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this page, Larian, these are our virtual hours. It's the same hours that were usually available when we're back in campus too, but it's 7:30 to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 6 on Friday, and then Saturday we're open 9 to 4, and we're usually closed Sundays. Our break hours are a little bit different, so these will change when we're on spring break or break between the semesters, but these are our normal semester hours. If you have any questions, just go to this main page and they'll tell you there. So go ahead and on to the next slide, Lauren, if you're ready to go.
Thank you. So one other resource on our website that I do want to show you is our online guides and tutorials, and you can access these by clicking Research Help near the top of the page. And so I'm just going to go to the actual site and show you. Research Help will give you this little drop-down menu, and there's a lot of stuff in here that's helpful for you. What I want to highlight to start with are research guides. So if you click on that, you will see a list of guide types, and you can also filter them by subject. So I like to click on by subject. To me, that makes it sort of easier to browse, because you will see that we have guides on basically every single kind of subject that we teach that's offered at Columbus State. And if you click on a category, it'll kind of expand, and you will see here are all the guides we have under the category of art. And if I click on one, like I might click on the art one if I'm talking about this Van Gogh question, we will see books, articles, websites, all these different sources that have been chosen by librarians to offer you to kind of get you started on art research. So as you can see, we have books in the library that you can check out. We have reference books, information on Ohio artists. So it's kind of a general resource. We also have ebooks over here that you can click on any of these and be taken to that. You'll also see articles, websites, and anything that you find from a library research guide is going to be, a credible source, because the library has has determined that basically, and that's why we offer them here. So lots of links to different museums, links to different places where you can access art, you know, images and that kind of thing. So any topic that you're interested in or that you're researching is probably going to have a relevant research guide. The other thing would be the MLA and APA citations guides. Depending on what kind of class you're taking, you're going to be required to cite your sources in either MLA or APA format, and your instructor will let you know which one of those you're using. You can go to these guides, and the purpose of it is to give you examples of how to make these citations so that they are formatted correctly. So for example, if I'm going to cite that journal article that we looked at, I can click on Cite Articles and look here and look for what? It was a journal article from a database. So if I click on that, it'll jump me right to this example, and I can see, okay, so I'm going to start with the author's name and then follow it up with the title of the article, the name of the journal itself, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really good for when you, a lot of these databases will give you this citation like already that you can kind of copy and paste, but you can use this to compare it and make sure it's correct. Or if it's something like a web source from a website that you looked up yourself, like the CNN article or the Van Gogh Museum, you can use this and write your own citation based on these example citations. You will also see information on how to format your paper so that you will have everything put together the way it's supposed to be. And we have instruction videos that go through and show you like what you need to click and what settings you need to set to make it formatted correctly. So I have those.
I have a great question that just popped up into the chat. Someone said, when I use the resources, aka the databases, it makes me go to many pages that when I go back, I can never get back to the same page. How do you get back to the same information you were researching without starting all over again and searching again? Can you go a little bit through that and maybe do like a sample search and have like, you know, maybe open up in a new tab or something like that so we can go through how you can do that?
Exactly. Very good question. So if you do a search and you get all these results, right, and you find an article that you decide that you like and you want to use, if you click on the title of the article, you'll find a few things on this page that'll help you out. The thing that I usually do, because I think it's the easiest, right over here under Tools on the right-hand side of the page, you will see something that says Permalink. It will pop you up with a special link in a little window that you can click on and copy. And you can paste that in an email to yourself or in your Word document or whatever it is you're using, just save that. And then anytime later you want to access it, I can just paste that link into the address bar and go. And it should take me directly there now because I'm already logged in. See? And I just went there straight from my blank tab. And if I have not yet logged in, it will prompt me to put in my name and my Cougar ID number, but then it will take me straight here. Now, that's going to take you to that article directly. It's not going to save your search. So if you do want to go back and see all of these search results again, the best thing to do is really just leave this open until you don't need to use it anymore. But you can do, like Alyssa said, you can right click in most browsers and click open link in new tab. So say I go to this article and it's interesting, but then I end up clicking on some link that I see on this page to something else, and I'm like 4 or 5 links down and I'm on a totally different page and I want to get back to my search results, I can just click right back into the tab before and they'll all be there. You do also have an option to create a folder, but I will warn you that unless you sign in not just to the database, but specifically click on sign in up here, and it will ask you to either create a username and password or use your Google account. If you don't do that and you just click folder, when you leave the site, it will go away. So feel free to do that, but know that you do have to set up a separate account for it to actually keep it permanently. I personally really like to just use my permalinks and put them in some kind of document I can go back to because it's quick and easy. Does that help answer that question?
I hope so. I think that answered for me how I would do it. I agree. I would open it up into a new tab. When I was doing research, that was the best bet for me, so that I could keep my search tab in one and keep that open and on the same page, but then have multiple tabs open for the specific documents that I was looking at. But I like the idea of having the folder as well, so you can save some of those things as well. So I hope we answered that. Please let us know if we didn't, and hopefully we can be able to chat with you later and maybe go through that. But it looks like we have about like 10 minutes left, so maybe we can see what's left of the slide and then answer any questions, any other questions.
Absolutely. I have My formatting kind of went nuts, so I have this big long image that's falling off my slide.
Totally fine.
But you get what it is, which is our YouTube page, and you can access that actually from the library homepage. You can either click on our red icon there that says need help, check out our YouTube page, or if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you will see all of our social media links down there, including YouTube. And we have tutorials as well. As you can see for Banned Books Week, we did a bunch of special videos of reading banned books and some recipe tutorials and just all kinds of fun stuff. We work real hard on putting out a lot of cool video content. So if you want information on how to use a certain database or how to do a certain kind of research, check out the YouTube page. You might find a tutorial, you might find something else interesting.
Yeah, and we post a lot of these things to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as well. So feel free to follow us if you want to see any of these cool things that we throw out there. If we have, you know, I do a lot of the videos, so I'm pretty proud of all the food videos, and I think we're gonna have a wonderful chocolate covered strawberry recipe coming out for for Valentine's Day. So if you guys have any like interest in those stuff, please, you know, check us out. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Raise your hand and maybe we'll get to you. Oh, someone said this was a really great session. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed this. So yeah, we do have about like 9 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, feel free to give us a chat. If not, I'm so glad you guys were here. So glad you guys, you know, got to hang out with us and learn a little bit about doing research. It's our favorite thing. That's my favorite thing. We're getting lots of thank yous. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. So glad you can join us. And again, you know, use all of our resources. We're here. That's what we're here for. Chat with us, call us, email us if you have any questions. You know, I answer all of the questions about the most random things. I get questions about financial aid and, you know, all of these other things. So just chat with us. We'll figure it out. We'll help you out. We'll get you to the right answers, you know, and we can help with your research and everything too.
Fantastic.
Great. Yeah, these are wonderful. Love you guys. This is awesome. Wow,
Thank you.
We need to do this more often. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for all the questions and participating.
I think everybody should take this one that goes to CSCC.
Oh, we have done David Tennant was the best doctor. I say 9 was my favorite doctor. I absolutely loved number 9. So if anyone's a fan of Doctor Who.
I gotta be a David Tennant fan at the end of the day, but I do love the 9th Doctor as well. I agree with you on that too.
I'm glad we have some fans. I was worried it was gonna fly over people's heads.
I'm not a fan of Doctor Who, but now I know what it's about, so I might start watching them.
Yeah. I
didn't know what it was.
There's a lot of Doctor Who, but I really loved it. And it's just fun to think about going back in time and talking to all these random people. So as a historian, that's like my favorite part.
Yeah, now it's history. It looked pretty interesting, like the Van Gogh one. That was a good one. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everything. Thanks for joining us, for talking to us. This was fun. I enjoyed this.
Same.
All right, well, it looks like there aren't any other questions. I think we're good to go.